Good morning, everyone. I'm Shota Deolusegun. In today's video, I want us to dissect proving consciousness as external virtue. So, what do I mean by that? Consciousness by using time energy wave model. I have a video on conscience, consciousness, and free will. Now, in that particular video, I use this time energy wave model to explain what consciousness is, what free will is, and then what conscience is. So, we have the reality of the universe at the present phase, which is the vertical line that we have in the middle. Now, before you can understand the reality of consciousness. So one has to understand the entirety of the universe. So we need to understand this formula, which is formula of everything. Then we need to understand the relationship of time to energy. So basically, I'm going to quickly use this time energy wave model to illustrate how formula of everything works, and then how we come about the equilateral triangle, which is the triangle that we have here. So then after that, then I will have to come right here, and here we'll be able to see, the event of happenings. Like if there is a particular action, maybe there is a particular action of pinching, so then the effect, consciousness, and reaction. So we're going to look at how we can narrow down the event towards the present and see how we derive reality from the present phase. So that is that. Now let's continue from here. Now this formula of everything was actually invented by me. So by saying me, I mean Shota Deolusegun. So now this formula is so powerful. Where there is a particular video where you have application of formula of everything or derivation of formula of everything. In that video, you can get to know how this formula is derived. You understand? So, well, it is just combination of differential calculus, then E equals mc squared of both Sir Newton Isaac and then Einstein. You understand? So now the differential calculus, I use chain rule to come about this, because the whole universe is actually modeled as is modeled in form of dimensions, and we have inverted versions of chains being interlocked in one another. So that is why we have this formula. So now this formula, what it does is, for us to apply this formula, we take what we know to get what we don't know. So for instance, we can use electron mass, which is this particular value, 9.109 times 10 raised power minus 31 kilogram. If we put that in place of this m and this m, it will actually generate a classical counterpart, which is what we don't know. So this will link the quantum mass worth of electron, will link to its counterpart at classical level, and that value will be 2,277,250,000 kilograms. So that is the unification that we have from quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. Now, what we now discover is that by the time for instance, if we should use this classical mass worth, because this is basically developed in such a way that we can use classical mass worth to get a quantum mass worth. You understand? So if we use this generated classical mass worth here, we'll be able to get this quantum mass worth again, but instead of getting the actual electron mass, it will be 9.109 times 10 raised power minus 32 kilogram. Now, the reason is because we have suspension at quantum level, and then the trajectory of time right from the classical level, it's more than the constraint of time energy wave interaction. So that is why we say that the reality is in the higher dimension. So, and I have illustrated that in some of my other videos. Like, for instance, if you're on Earth, you may not be able to see the entirety of the Earth to, you know, to discern the shape, the size of the Earth. But if you travel away from the Earth, then you'll be able to capture the entirety of the Earth in order for you to be able to describe the Earth more. So same thing is what is actually happening here. By being inside the time energy wave interactions, or by being inside the time energy wave model, you can't actually, get the real picture of, the reality, not until when you go outside. And that is why we now get to know that there is connectivity from quantum level to external dimension. Just as we have classical mechanics, classical mechanics being connected to quantum mechanics, because there is no way you describe human being as he is without describing the quantum part of human being. So the emanation of human existence is right from the quantum mechanics to classical mechanics. So we have that. So even though as classical mechanics is connected to quantum mechanics, same way quantum mechanics is connected to outside world, which is the higher dimension. So basically, by using this formula, then we can connect the quantum mechanics to classical mechanics, and as well connect the entitle of the whole thing to the higher dimension for the reality that we need. And now, by looking at this, we see that right inside the time energy wave model, if we should supply, because by the time we use this classical mass worth, then the quantum mass worth that we will get, the weak conveying force, this 4m represents weak conveying force, while this represents strong conveying force. Now this weak force will be suspended to this, and so we have the wave amplitude to be 5.7 times 10 raised power minus 48. And so we have that here. We have 5.7, then we have couple of zeros. And these zeros at 32nd position suspend this value. So we have 9,109. So we do not have point right here. But by the time we actually annihilate the suspended zeros, the entitle of the suspended zeros, then we're going to get 9.109 times 10 raised power minus 32 in standard form. So we need to manually do the annihilation of zeros. And when we are annihilating the zeros, then the trajectory we have to come from the suspended realm point down straight like this, then that is instant, and that forms the present phase. So for you to get idea of how the equilateral triangle is being derived, let me quickly explain. Now, by the time we have this suspension to this particular value, we know that this suspension is at classical realm, and we know that is a strong conveying force. And so how can we now come about the weak region? By studying the relationship, energy will only be at a weak state only when it is being scaled by time, such that it is being expanded by time scaling. And so we can start the drawing of the triangle by having one point right here, which is the strong point. So this weak point cannot be horizontal to this strong point, because time scaling we have to extend, we'll have to stretch energy, and so we have another point here which is the weak point. So by drawing the line to connect them, we have the first wave magnitude, which is, this is the classical one, so it's going to be 5.7 times 10, instead of minus 48 it will be 48 raised power 48. So that's what we have here. Let me just put that one here. Then we have it. So this is what we have. Now if you look at, you see that we have raised power 48, but basically that is not the power of the suspension, because we have the power of the suspension to be 30 seconds. Well, time scales higher than the scaling of the energy. It is time that is the strong conveying force. So it scales energy. So it travels higher than energy. It stretches energy, and that is why its own suspension to energy suspension is higher. So we need to get this the highest suspension, because energy must be scaled by times length to the point where we can have spontaneous symmetry breaking, and that is why we're quoting the overall amplitude of the wave. So that is why we have this. Good. So now that we have this, we know that we have from strong point to the weak point. Now for us to get the weak point at quantum level, what do we need to do? That is when we will have to annihilate these errors. And when we're now annihilating these errors, we know it can't go back like this, diagonally like this. So we have to go straight down, because it is annihilating zeros. So it's going to be instant. So we now draw that. We draw another line to connect the weak point. But the thing is, as this value is traveling down, it travels beyond the weak point inside the time energy wave model, because it must get connected to the real mass worth of electron, and the real mass worth of electron is outside the time energy wave model. So because we know that when you supply this quantum amplitude, wave amplitude, you are going to get so tiny mass worth of electron, because this fixed point, the suspended point, is more or less like arbitrary stable point. So it is not that it is completely stable, but at this region where we have more spacious for the mass worth of electron, then we really have that real stable state to have the real mass worth of electron. Now, because there is this relativity or entanglement between the suspension at classical level to the suspension at quantum level, then this actual mass worth of electron must be injected into the weak point, quantum weak point. And once that happens, it will quickly decay and it will accelerate momentum towards the central singularity. So this one is already likened to the, popping in of virtual particles at quantum level and all that. So now, in my other video explanation for consciousness, I tag this particular, the genuine mass worth of electron, I tag it to be the conscious, which is the conscious worth, the conscious value that must be gotten out in this must be gotten in the higher dimension, and it will be fed back into the system to accelerate momentum. Now this fixed point is stable fixed point, so additional energy is needed to let it travel towards the singularity of the future. So basically, that is the quick explanation as to how this formula of everything is applicable to consciousness and all that. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to see how we can connect this thing to consciousness, and how we can see how we can actually arrive at this present phase as the phase of reality. So that is what we're going to do. But before we go into other section of the tutorial, I want us to look at this diagram very well. This vertical instant line is the present, and I said it that present is an instant combination of the past and the future. That is the present. Now we have this expansion phase to be the past, and we have this contraction phase to be the future. So now we're going to see how we can get that past scenario and future scenario, and see how they can actually, scale towards the present to let us have reality of consciousness. That is what we're going to do. So now let's get to this particular image here. So now we want to illustrate uninformed state, which is from past to the future. That is the first thing. Now I want us to think of a particular situation where we have Mr. A and Mr. B. Now let's say that Mr. A in his mind has decided to pinch Mr. B. So Mr. B is unaware of this action of Mr. A. So if Mr. A should go ahead and pinch Mr. B, well, we are going to look at how the whole thing will flow. You understand? To the point that to the point of Mr. B's reaction. So now let's start. So Mr. A pinches Mr. B, then we have the first phase, which is action. So action of pinching causes effect. Now by pinching Mr. B, there will be effect. Now effect of impact will trigger consciousness. Now Mr. B will be conscious of that pinching. Now by looking at this flow, we know already that our consciousness happened after action must have taken place. So it means that Mr. B is not conscious of Mr. A's action at the instance of that pinching. So we can study the flow like that to be from past to the future. So Mr. B will be conscious, then consciousness of experience or worth. That is, when you experience something, what you experience will be in form of worth that will have impact on your energy state, because it's more or less like you are at equilibrium before and something happens that will excite your energy state. So it's going to be in form of worth, and so by experiencing that we enforce reaction. So now the reaction that will come will be after Mr. B must have been conscious of the action. And now before he could react to that pinching, definitely Mr. A will have escaped, because before he would probably, maybe his reaction would be to retaliate, to beat Mr. A. You understand? Before he could actually gather himself to stand up and chase Mr. A, then Mr. A will have escaped. And that is actually telling us that consciousness happens after action must have taken place. Now we have seen that from the past to the future. Now, what kind of scenario can we have to have this same kind of events from the future to the past? Yes, let's now let's look at a situation where Mr. B is being pre-informed of Mr. A's action. So by having this information, Mr. B will be in alert mode. And as a result of that, his reaction will be the first thing So by reacting to that information, that will enforces consciousness. Now his reaction will let him be in the conscious state even before any effect, even before any action. So he will be in that conscious state in preparation for what is to come. So now consciousness of anticipated event will prepare for effect. Now that effect of forthcoming practice will now unfold action. Now let's say now that Mr. B is conscious of what is coming. Now let's say Mr. A now come to the scene. Mr. B, if he wants to capture Mr. A red-handed, if he wants to capture Mr. A red-handedly, then he may decide to just pretend and play along. And he may decide to retaliate before Mr. A could do anything. But now, if he decided to play along, then he will wait. Then Mr. will now see that because he's being conscious, that consciousness will now allow effect to come before action, because it's more or less like he's reacting to the effect which is yet to happen. So now effect of forthcoming practice will now unfold action. Now if Mr. A should now get near him and pinch him, now at that point Mr. B might beat Mr. A before running away, because he was already in the state of consciousness before even Mr. A came to the scene to pinch him. You understand? So now we now see that the flow is from future to the past. Now what do we get? If you look at that scenario, you see that the event of moving from the future to the past has narrowed down the scale of time towards the present, such that we now have instant as the combination of the past and the present. So because that has narrowed it down, then Mr. B could retaliate on time. So Mr. B could deal with Mr. A even before Mr. A could run away. So that is the essence. And from here, we have seen that the present is actually the combination of the past and the future. And it is so now from here, we have seen that the present is the combination of the past and the future. So now here, as time, the past and the future, they are phases in motion. So the only phase where we have static nature is the present phase. And so now, because we have event, we have from past to the future and from future to the past, coming together. When they annihilate each other, of course they will not completely annihilate each other, because what they are doing is different. What do I mean by that? You can see that what we have right here in between are different from what we have here. For us to let this be meaningful, what we have here must be changed to what we have here. And so what they are doing is different from each other. So they will not completely annihilate to have zero state. So it's going to be instant, and then the remnant that we have, that is the virtue of time being faster than the speed of light, and that is the virtue of what we have in the black hole, that light cannot travel faster than cannot escape the black hole. So that is what we have there. So now we can see that the present is the combination, and from here we see that by having that mindset based on the external information that Mr. B has, Now you see that something must happen to trigger at quantum level, which is more or less like having the real mass worth of electron that I said before, that will be injected into the system to accelerate towards the singularity of the future. So we must have external information to be in that conscious state. So consciousness is a virtual outside the time energy wave constraint. So it's something that must come right from outside. So now we can see that there is subconscious mind and there is conscious mind. So subconscious mind is wide in its own operation, while the conscious mind is so narrow, and we have that at the present phase. So present phase is the phase of reality, and that is why if you look at what we have here, it's synonymous to what Sir Newton Isaac have in some of his nature's law, that action, reaction. Now you see that we have reaction, we have action. So action reaction that we have here is of asymmetric nature by what? So which is at quantum level. Then we have another one here, action reaction. This one is of symmetric nature by balanced motion, classical. So the symmetric nature that we have that empowers constancy of light and then constancy of gravity, they are obtainable at classical level. So we only have symmetric nature by motion. We have symmetric nature by motion, but we have asymmetric nature by nature. So we have symmetric nature by motion, while we have asymmetric nature by nature. Good. So now the constancy of gravity, the constancy of light, yes, they are obtainable both at classical and quantum, but we know at quantum level we have asymmetric nature. So now if we weigh the operation, the relationship, what this from past to the future is all about is different from what this from future to the past is all about. And we have dissected that in time energy wave model. So at quantum level we have radiation. So that makes the particle to be light relative to the mass worth at classical level. You understand? So they are by nature they are different to each other. So now we see that by mindset is actually narrowing the past and future towards the static phase of the present for reality of spontaneous symmetry breaking, collapsing of wave patterns by traveling in time. So now we see that we have that. Now, another thing that can actually prove to us that the present is the combination of the past and the future is that, you know, that this particular occurrence, Mr. B can later, think about it by replaying what has been stored in his memory. And so we see that we still have access to what had happened by the virtue of the present being the combination of the past and the future. Now, how do we get access to future information? We get access to future information by imagination, and then we have intuition to guide us as to what information we have, because what we're trying to get has never happened. So imagination will take us far to future realm, and then intuition will guide us right as to the necessary information we need to get. So just as the real mass worth of electron is in the higher dimension, and then the tiny mass worth, let's look at this. The tiny mass worth that we have, which is this one, will be the one that will locate this real electron mass worth. So this mass worth, this tiny mass worth, will be guided towards this real mass worth of electron, and that is why we have relativity to guide this through to get this, and then we have entanglement as well. So that is that. Then now we can see that for us to have access to the replay of events that had happened, and then to have access to imagination that can take us to the future information, then part of the past and the future must be part of the present. And that is why the present is the combination of the past and the future. Then another thing I want us to look at is when you look at this time energy wave model, you see that it's in form of 2D, two dimension. Yes, like my own is not like the it's not like having time in fourth dimension and then uh, three dimension forming the space. No, time starts as we have the evolution of the universe and energy also. So now it's like we have 2D and then the extended what is it called dimension will be the 3D. So it's like we have the subconscious to be of 2D, based on which the 3D is built as conscious, uh, you know, face. So we now have the by having the 3D dimension, then we have the whole consciousness of ourselves as a being. So that is what that is telling us. So that is that. With this, I think we have been able to, get the fact that consciousness is an external virtue that must pop into the time energy wave, just as we have a pumping of a virtual particle at in the vacuum space. So we have consciousness pumping into time energy wave model, which is 2D, to get that 3D reality of our being, of ourselves as human being. So that's what consciousness is, and that is the reality of consciousness. We can see that it's synonymous to, pumping into the existence of a virtual particle in a vacuum state. So that is that about the video. And so basically we have the architectural, this is just the architectural framework of conscious collapse at static present phase. So the title of what we have here, the diagram, is architectural framework of conscious collapse at static present. So now that is that. So I decided to have this framework so as to be able to understand the concept quite all right. So with that, we can actually have a diagram that we visually illustrate what consciousness is all about, and we already have it. So we can have event as they flow from the past into the future, then have it as they flow from the future into the past. And that is what we have done, and we have seen how that has narrowed down to the present phase. So that is that. I believe this video is quite informative and insightful. So if you like the video, make sure you like it for real by smashing the like button. Then it's a novel discovery. I'm going to put link to my research publication in the description below. Don't hesitate to share this with your friend. And then yes, don't hesitate to share with your friend, because we want this to travel as quick as possible, so that people would know that there is a new discovery that can deal with consciousness, that can deal with the unification of quantum mechanics to classical mechanics, and some other things. Though I have used this model to explain a lot of things, even the almost empty nature of atom and some other things like that. Then don't hesitate to share with your friend, then like the video for real. You can check the description section to get the published the research publication. You understand? You can click the section below to get that. So that is that. God bless you till we meet in the next video. I remain my humble self. Thank you. God bless you.